The police's voices reverberated throughout the house on that scorching summer day when they suddenly arrived unannounced. I found myself bewildered, certain there must have been some kind of mistake. I protested, "My daughter is currently napping. There's clearly a misunderstanding here." Nonetheless, the cold, unyielding handcuffs were firmly clasped onto my wrists, and I was escorted away by the officers. Their request was simple. They wanted me to meet a child who had been discovered in the mountains. As they handed the child over to me, the little one gave me a warm smile and affectionately called me Mommy. From that moment onward, I embarked on an unexpected journey, one that held a future filled with uncertainties. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Emily Johnson, an ordinary office worker at the age of 33. My husband, Tom, serves as a firefighter, and we are a contented couple residing close to our parents' home, where we are raising our spirited 4-year-old daughter, Margaret. Recently, we received the joyful news of expecting our second child, who is thriving within my womb. Margaret eagerly looked forward to becoming a big sister. However, despite the happiness that this new addition brought, a sense of unease lingered within me. My concern stemmed from my own complicated relationship with my twin sister. Growing up, our parents showered both of us with endless love, yet our personalities couldn't have been more different. I was reserved and studious, while Catherine was outgoing, sociable, and a bit cunning. In our early years, we played together joyfully, but as time passed, my resentment towards her grew. It all began during our elementary school days when we coincidentally ended up in the same class. Catherine gradually started ignoring me and even began ostracizing me in front of her friends. Our parents and teachers were puzzled by our strained relationship, despite us being identical twins. Recognizing the strain, they decided to place us in separate classes, hoping it would help. At home, Catherine's hostility towards me only intensified. If she caught me doing my homework, she'd mock me, labeling me a nerd. She once tore a page from my exam paper when I had scored perfectly due to my hard work, leaving me in tears. I vividly remember the pain when she tampered with my cherished dance outfit, a class I was passionate about. My parents scolded Catherine many times, but her response was always defiant. "Mom and Dad favor you because you're the good daughter, don't they?" she would retort. Catherine frequently lashed out, despite our parents' attempts to treat us equally. Catherine's defiance and troublesome behavior became even more pronounced when she entered middle school. Her problematic conduct seemed to escalate with each passing day. While I remained a dedicated student, committed to my studies, Catherine chose an entirely different path. She began associating with negative influences, staying out late, and returning home to engage in destructive behavior and loud confrontations, which soon became a daily occurrence. I vividly recall an incident when Catherine threw an ornament at me, striking my forehead. Throughout my childhood, I grappled with how to handle her selfish, self-centered, and often cruel demeanor. After middle school, we headed to separate high schools. I attended a local college prep school, whereas Catherine barely managed to get into another one. However, she swiftly dropped out once she turned 18, leaving home abruptly and cutting off all contact with us. According to my parents, she occasionally reappeared, making demands for money before quickly vanishing again. Honestly, I had no desire to maintain a close connection with her. The last time I encountered Catherine was during my first pregnancy. My husband and I were visiting our parents when she arrived at the family home, dressed extravagantly with heavy makeup. "Big sis, you're here," she greeted me as I started to respond with, "It's been a while." Interrupting me, Catherine turned to our parents and nonchalantly asked, "Hey, Mom, Dad, can you lend me some money? $300 will do." Our parents appeared bewildered by her sudden request for money. I couldn't help but intervene, saying, "Catherine, stop borrowing money from our parents. You have a job, don't you?" With an irritated tone, Catherine retorted, "It's none of your business. You've always acted like the good child, trying to please our parents. It's so annoying every single time." She then glanced at my husband, who was seated beside me, and proceeded to assess him from head to toe with a smirk. "And who is this? Your husband? He looks rather ordinary. Isn't he a firefighter tasked with protecting people's safety?" Well, I suppose he suits you. But could you not be so full of yourself, big sis, or let your husband do the talking? It's none of your business. I chose to remain silent, and Catherine, with a triumphant expression, added, just you wait and see. I would achieve more success than you, she confidently declared. Although I didn't entirely grasp her intent, a disconcerting undercurrent lurked behind her intense gaze. In the end, her parents caved into her demands one last time, reluctantly handing Catherine $3,000. Frustrated with her behavior, they considered this payout their final attempt to appease her, seemingly cutting ties with her thereafter. It had been over 5 years since I last saw Catherine, and I remained clueless about her whereabouts. Given our strained sibling relationship, I hoped that my own children would treasure each other and maintain a close bond. You're worried they might end up like you and Catherine, aren't you? My spouse inquired. I reassured him, saying, don't worry, our kids will get along just fine. But tell me, what activities do you want them to learn? What kind of people do you want them to become? Contemplating this, I replied, for our daughters, perhaps I'll suggest the things I learned as a child. He enthusiastically agreed, saying, that's a great idea. Let's focus on helping them grow and supporting them in the best way we can. Whenever I faced challenges, my husband seemed to instinctively sense it. I was genuinely grateful to have such a caring and sincere partner by my side, and his support had allowed me to lead happy days. As summer arrived, I entered my 7th month of pregnancy. However, one scorching midsummer afternoon, an unexpected incident unfolded. After a delightful morning at the pool with my daughter Margaret, I returned home for lunch, and Margaret settled down for her afternoon nap. Suddenly, the phone at the health center rang. When I answered the door, I was met with the stern visage of a police officer. You're under arrest for abandoning a child in the mountains, he stated firmly. I was taken aback, unable to comprehend his accusation. I stammered, what? My daughter is currently napping. What are you talking about? The police officer continued to glare at me with evident anger. The little girl discovered that she had an ID tag while we were in the mountains. The tag clearly displayed my name and address. Are you still going to play in the sand? I hesitated, sensing a strange shift in the atmosphere. The police officer, with a stern expression, produced handcuffs and secured my wrists. I was momentarily lost in thought, believing it to be some kind of mistake. However, the icy touch of the metal cuffs quickly snapped me back to the harsh reality I was now confronting. Desperately, I implored the police to contact my husband and explain the situation, urging him to take care of Margaret. They reluctantly granted my request. After entrusting my husband with the ensuing matters, I was escorted to the police station. There, the police introduced me to the child they claimed I had abandoned in the mountains. The girl was a complete stranger, around 3 years old, yet her face radiated with joy. In that moment, I could feel the weight of the police officer's eyes on me, as if they were silently saying, this must be your child after all. Given the circumstances, I couldn't blame them for drawing that conclusion. The child's face did indeed bear a striking resemblance to how my sister, Catherine, and I appeared as children. Then it struck me, this child was likely Catherine's offspring. She resembled me so closely that she must have mistaken me for her mother. However, I couldn't fathom why she had been left in the mountains, and more puzzlingly, why my name and address were on her ID tag. Nevertheless, I had no doubt in my mind that she was Catherine's child. I frantically tried to explain the situation to the police. In the end, they confirmed that my only child was Margaret and allowed me to temporarily return home. Although I was free, my concern for Karen, who was likely Catherine's child and now alone at the police station, weighed heavily on my mind. I rushed to my parents' house and recounted the day's events, pleading with them to try and contact Catherine. However, it seemed Catherine had changed her phone number, making it impossible to reach her. Since the police couldn't immediately locate Catherine, my parents, as her grandparents, took custody of Karen. On the day Karen first arrived at my family home, she appeared very nervous and asked, your name is Karen, right? Did your mom tell you she was going somewhere? I don't know, Karen replied. Where is Mom? I want to see her. You look like my mom, but you're not my mom, are you? I gently responded, True, we do look alike, don't we? But no, I'm not your mom. I'm actually your aunt, and I am your grandmother, I gently explained to Karen. So you can feel safe and stay here with us. My parents and I reassured her with kind words, and gradually, the anxious expression on Karen's face began to fade. She nodded in agreement. Karen, do you remember that day when you got separated from your mom in the mountains? I asked. Mom said we were going for a drive, and I was so happy because it was my first drive. But when we reached the top of the mountain, Mom made me get out of the car. Then, when I was outside, Mom just drove away and left me alone. I walked around outside, but it was so hot, and gradually, I became thirsty, but there was nothing to drink. I tried really hard to find Mom, but I got sleepy and fell asleep in the mountains. I had heard about the events of that day from the police. Karen had been abandoned and was rescued by hikers. Thinking about the hardship and loneliness she must have felt brought tears to my eyes. Why did Mom leave me and disappear? I was so scared, Karen said, her voice trembling. While I couldn't help but feel angry about what my sister had done, I didn't want to make Karen feel lonely anymore. So I instinctively embraced her. In that moment, the realization that she was my biological niece became palpable, and my love for her deepened. How could anyone, especially their own flesh and blood, do such a terrible thing? I knew I could never forgive Catherine. To ensure I didn't overwhelm Karen, I took my time and gently inquired about what she knew. Thanks to Karen remembering the name of the store where Catherine worked, I was able to quickly identify my sister's location. Karen informed me that Catherine worked in the entertainment district of the neighboring city and lived in an apartment nearby. Let's pretend that Dad has passed away and call Catherine, I suggested. If we send a letter saying we want to discuss inheritance, I bet she'll definitely come home. I know it's painful to fake Dad's death, but what do you think? For Karen's sake, let's do it. I quickly wrote the letter and placed it in the mailbox. A few days later, as expected, Catherine came home. I entrusted Karen to my husband while my parents and I confronted Catherine. She looked baffled. What's this? I thought Dad was supposed to be dead. What's happening with the inheritance? I explained, now, let's just pretend to get you here. It was a lie. However, there's something far more important we need to discuss. Catherine retorted, what's so important? I have nothing to talk about. Don't run away, I implored. It's about Karen. Oh, you found her? Catherine asked. Where is she now? My husband is taking care of her right now, I replied. I can't let her see you. She's alive and has even become attached to the family. And you? Well, just keep her then. You're happy, right? I was dumbfounded by Catherine's callous attitude. Without my parents or me asking, Catherine, feeling ashamed, began explaining how Karen came to be born. It turned out that Karen was the child of a customer at the shop where Catherine was working at the time. This customer had pretended to be a company president, and Catherine believed that having his child would make her the president's wife, leading to a complete turnaround in her life. Thus, she became pregnant and gave birth to Karen. However, it was later revealed that the man was not a company president but merely a part-timer who disappeared without taking any responsibility. Catherine reluctantly raised Karen, but she recently got a new boyfriend, and having a child was getting in the way of her plans. I was astonished that my sister would say such irresponsible things. I understand your selfish reasons, I said, but why did you attach a missing child tag with my name and address on it? Catherine replied, oh that. I thought she would probably die in the mountains. If someone found her body, they would think she's your child, and no one would contact her to me, leaving me free. Things turned out just as I planned, right? Seeing Catherine leave shamelessly as she spoke, I lost my patience. Karen was about to die from heat stroke without water. Are you really her mother? You must be out of your mind. My sister mocked my distressed words, saying, people die when they die. You're here all worked up, aren't you? In the end, she's alive, isn't it fine? Someone, as I expected, brought Karen to your place, right? Aren't you surprised? I exploded with anger at Catherine's excessively selfish words. Who do you think broke Karen? She was taken into custody by the police, do you understand? What? Why the police? Catherine looked at me with a shocked expression, apparently not having imagined that it would escalate to involve the police. How much lack of imagination do you have? Normally, if a child is left in the mountains, the police will act, and they came to my house. I was handcuffed. They are still looking for you. It can't be true. There's no way, Catherine protested. You're too dumb, I retorted. The police told me to report immediately once I know your whereabouts. I had already had my mother contact the police. They will be here soon. Catherine, flustered, turned pale and stammered. Am I going to be arrested? Of course, I replied firmly. As I said, I was handcuffed too. It's only natural that you'll be arrested. You're not a child. You need to take responsibility for your actions. This can't be a joke. I was about to start a new life. There's no way I'm getting arrested. Catherine suddenly leaped up and attempted to flee from the entrance while shouting. However, I swiftly blocked her path, meeting her furious gaze with determination. What can a pregnant woman like you do? If you care about your unborn baby, get out of the way. Or should I punch your big belly? Catherine threatened. If you dare, then come. I will stand my ground. I confronted Catherine, shouting back. Catherine raised her fist, genuinely attempting to strike me. But in the next moment, with a loud thud, she spun around and fell backward onto the floor. Ouch! Why did you do that? She protested. Oh, did you forget? Taekwondo, I replied calmly. I've been learning it for a long time. Indeed, I had been practicing Taekwondo since my childhood, intending to teach it to my daughters. I had never anticipated that the Taekwondo skills I had acquired for self-defense would come in handy to restrain my sister. Quickly, I grabbed Catherine's wrist to prevent her from escaping and used a leg technique to pin her to the ground. It hurts. The police are coming, so even if I'm pregnant, immobilizing you is no big deal, I told her firmly. The police will be here soon, so behave, you stupid sister. Do you really think it's okay to do this to your sibling? It's too late to conveniently mention family or sister now, I retorted. As I tightened my grip, Catherine couldn't bear the pain and cried out again. It really, really hurts. I'm saying it'll break. I'm so sorry, please stop. I had no intention of letting go. However, our parents intervened, standing between us and restraining Catherine. Soon after, we heard the sound of a police car approaching. The police officers entered the house, assessed the situation, and initially looked surprised. They then helped Catherine to her feet for identification. Catherine slumped, whether from pain or the realization of being caught, half crying as she was escorted into the patrol car and taken away. Later, Catherine was charged with abandoning Karen in the mountains and was sent to prison. Her boyfriend quickly abandoned her, and having chosen to cut ties with us, she likely had no friends or family to help her after her release. I couldn't foresee how my sister, now with a criminal record, would live in the future. I could only hope she reflected on her actions, turned her life around, and took steps toward a new beginning. Meanwhile, Karen was taken in by my parents and raised with love. I frequently visited my parents' house with my daughter. The two close cousins began attending Taekwondo classes together to learn self-defense. Even after the birth of my second child, Karen and Margaret, as sisters, doted on the new addition to the family. Occasionally, seeing the three of them napping together brought a smile to my face. I hope to build happy days ahead, showering everyone with all the love possible and ensuring that the entire family lived happily.